Hi, my name is Lorraine Salazar, co-owner of Sal's Mexican Restaurants, a third-generation family business from the Central Valley. Been in business since 1942, and I'm a co-owner along with my brother Carl Salazar, and I will be hosting this month's episode of Confidential Bulletin. I'm excited for a conversation with two other great women in this industry that I serve on the California Restaurant Association board with. And that is Dolores Jackson and Christy Vega. And I want them to know that I admire them a lot and look forward to talking about our common interests that we have in our restaurants and in the CRA.
And now for a word from our sponsor.
Isn't it amazing we live in a world where we can pretty much get anything we need when we need it delivered right to our door? It's bananas. I love the convenience. I lost my charger, but got one quick through DoorDash. DoorDash, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to get almost anything from pet food to snacks to neck braces to alcohol to toothpaste to Joy-Con controllers to headphones to, you get it. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets.
So with that, I want to thank you both for joining me. And would like to go ahead and start with Christy Vega.
Hi, thank you, Lorraine, for having me. My name to everybody out there is Christy Vega, and I'm the owner of Casa Vega restaurant in Los Angeles, which is 68 years old this year. So we're very excited about that. And I am the second generation owner. Casa Vega was founded in 1956 by my father, Ray Vega, and we've been thriving on the corner of Ventura and Fulton ever since. We've been serving our keeping tradition with our family recipes. We're really famous for our craft margaritas, and for those of you who tend to watch movies, you may have seen us in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Wonderful. And I did see that movie, and I did see you as a cameo in the movie as well. And I'd also like to introduce our listeners to Dolores Jackson of Lolita's Mexican Food. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your legacy.
Thank you, Lorraine. So I'm Dolores Jackson with Lolita's Mexican Food. We're also a family-owned and operated business here in San Diego County, California, obviously. We've been in business. This is our 40th year in business. I, along with 5 of my siblings and my parents, still work in the family business on a daily basis. And you can definitely find us and come join us to eat our amazing food.
Well, we all share this longevity and legacy of our family businesses. And of course, it started with our ancestors, our family that went before us. We're all family businesses, which is really important here in the state of California, right? Businesses built on the backs of family businesses and immigrant businesses. Mm-hmm. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about how our roots in Mexico have shaped the American dream that our restaurants have achieved for our families. How does that fit into your family legacy and the continuation and your goals for the business? Let's start with Christy.
Well, our family roots are huge in our restaurant and in our family. My father was from Tijuana, and a huge amount of my family is still there. So I go often and all the time. We are from the Baja region. My father was also consul general for Mexico, for the state of Nevada. So we were always in a very proud immigrant family. And I think that what you hit upon, Lorraine, is so true, is that we're all family businesses and we're all Latino family businesses. And I think that that is something very, very prevalent within the Latino community, is that you want to, there's so much entrepreneurship within our community, and that really the goal is to be able to provide a business and provide for your family, but also for future generations. And I think that that's what we're all experiencing right now, is that we have stepped in businesses that were set up for us by our ancestors, and how, just like you, Lorraine, I plan on the succession with my 4 sons as well. So I think that it's very much tied into our culture, the entrepreneurship, and also the family generations keep passing down these legacy restaurants. You will find time and time again, they tend to be very ethnic based, whether in the Chinese culture and in the Mexican culture and Indian culture. And I think that you hit upon something really, really well, was that it's the American dream, and that restaurants are one of the true last pathways to the American dream for immigrants. You You maybe can't come here and be a doctor or a lawyer, but you can come here from Mexico and you can open a taco shop. And the same thing from India and from Thailand, and you can bring these cuisines over. So I think it's so important, and that's part of what we all fight for so much, is to be able to have the space in business for families to be able to participate, not just big business. That kind of Latino pride flows through me immensely. And it's an amazing dream. In 2022, Vega was awarded the James Beard Award of American Classics. And I remember walking up on stage to get the medal thinking that when in a Mexican restaurant is an American classic, we've really broken through a lot of barriers. And so that's how even sign of this lineage of where we come from really means so much to me today.
Well, that's great, Christy. Congratulations on that James Beard Award. I watched that and saw your post, and it was just wonderful. Dolores, let's talk about your history, your family history, and immigration, and how that has affected the growth of your business. I mean, you have 6 or 7 locations and a number of family members in the business.
Yeah, so our history really goes back to my grandparents. So my grandparents, obviously from Mexico. My grandfather came to the U.S. Working as the bracero, and brought along, as he was out here, he eventually wanted to bring his family over. So once he did, my family in general recently celebrated 60 years in the restaurant industry with a huge gala in Vegas. And as the oldest granddaughter, I was asked to speak on behalf of the family. So my speech focused on what got us here. What was that journey like, from Mexico to the U.S.? And now my parents and our family are celebrating 40 years in the business with Lolitas. And so it all takes me back to those stories that we used to listen to, the stories that I got up from asking as well as I was preparing for the speech. What happened? What was that dream like? What was the goal? And my family truly is living that American dream, through the generations. And, 20 years later, and as I said, my grandparents, when they came here, they opened the tortilleria. That was the first thing they opened, and eventually going on to restaurants to feed their growing family. And that's really how it started. Is they needed to feed their growing family. And so I mentioned 20 years later, my parents did the same thing. Both dealt with, now how to navigate through challenges. They had to embrace the opportunities when they were here and overcome some of those obstacles to get them where they were. So remembering the values, the hard work, the resilience that it took the family to get to where they're at now definitely influences who I am today and how I run the business, because failure is not an option. Obviously, we've all received as well some of the accolades, best burritos, best Mexican concept. I received a Women of Influence award. And again, none of that would have been possible without my family paving the way. And it's just there's so much pride in going back and seeing kind of where and what my family did to get here. And that 60th anniversary gala in Vegas, was amazing. And it just, we're so proud of who we are. We're so proud of what our grandparents did to get us here, to instill that hard work ethic and integrity that we need to push forward. And we want to do the same with our family and with our children. Whether they're interested in the business or not, still yet to be seen. But for us, it's just really pushing forward, paving the way, and helping our team members know that they too can, find that dream, even if it starts with being a cashier or a cook or whatever that is.
Well, both of you, I just a little bit more about my backgrounds. My dad started the business in 1942. My grandparents came from the Jalisco and Zacatecas region of Mexico. So that's where the influences of our food comes from. When my grandfather came over, it was part because of the Cristero movement, the religious persecution that was going on in those areas that brought them over into the United States. And by way of Chicago, they found themselves back in California. And so my grandmother and grandfather, along with my father, they were working for the railroads. My dad was a teenager working in the fields here in Central Valley, picking peaches. And every day on his way to work during the summer, and as the eldest of 8 children, he would say, there's got to be a better way of life. And my grandmother was making lunches for the migrant workers. So we decided, my dad said, hey, Mom and Pop, we've got to open up a restaurant. We got to take this little lunch business that my mother does for the migrant workers and the railroad workers, and we need to put this into a business. So with some chicken coop wire and lumber from a farmer who had meant to build a chicken coop and never got around to it, he bought it for $25 and started and opened his first little incarnation of a business. And we're very proud of those stories and those histories, right? Well, my dad, as through the years when I came along, said to me, as I worked in the restaurant with him as a child, we all had little things we had to do. I had to peel chilies, take the stems off of chiles, of fresh chiles. I had to, when we got to be able to use a knife, we would take the stems off of the dried chilies, cut them open, and de-seed them. And this would all be doing, let's say, before school or after school and working. And he said, you're working hard now because I want you to understand that to value education that was, he felt, denied to him as the eldest of 8 children, and eventually, I mean, it was not that it was denied, it was a choice. He made a choice with that. But I want you to understand, well, we all went to school and we all ended up back in the business, different restaurants, but in the business. And I said, my dad passed when I was only 20 years old. And I said to my mom, I said, Mom, we went off, we did things, we all came back. We saw this as a path, very much as you were all talking about, as an entrepreneurship path, to have your own business, to be able to help others. Because through all of our restaurants and everybody we've employed, and you alluded to this, Dolores, that, they have gone on. Some of it, I can't tell you how many people have gone on to open up their own little restaurant. Mm-hmm. But what this does, and each of us in these legacies, is this building generational wealth, not only for our families, but for all the other people that we employ, and showing them that entrepreneurship is possible. And Christy, you said, whether it's Chinese, Italian, if you look at the history of immigrants, food is at the core. That is the common thing that brings us all together. So regardless of whatever the differences are that are going on in our world, especially politically, as we will talk about advocacy and survival, food brings us together. That is the common thing, that we can all gather at a table and enjoy a meal and set all of the other distractions, aside with that. So leading into the advocacy, we each got, involved with the Restaurant Association for many reasons and different reasons. Why is the CRA and your involvement in the CRA important to you? And I'd like to start with Dolores this time.
So thank you, Lorraine. So why is advocacy so important? I'll be honest, it's only been a number of years, and I think COVID is really what pushed me more so into advocacy. I wanted to know who was out there speaking for us. And we've been members of the CRA for many, many years, but we were never fully involved. So for me, it kind of gave me an opportunity to join, to get to meet people, to understand, what we go through in order for us to have our voices heard. And, one small business may not have that voice. So if we gain and join, in this case, the CRA, we're able to speak with like-minded individuals, hear each other's challenges and struggles, and then be able to hopefully put something forth that helps us advocate for better practices or, push a little on a policy. But I think it's really the voice, and in making that voice louder and able to be heard is really what pushed me on to being part of the CRA and the advocacy.
That's great. And Christy, you are all over social media and you do a fantastic job at it. And you're really great at calling out, our legislative, whether it be council members or assembly members, but, on your local level, your council members, when they are not in step in addressing the issues. So talk a little bit about some of those issues that are affecting you and how you do that and the responses that you get.
Yeah, well, I'm similar to Dolores that before COVID, I wasn't quite as vocal and active. And then once I saw the same people that I voted for not return my phone calls, tell me that my workers should go to food banks when they shut us down needlessly time and time again here in LA, and pretty much treated us as disposables. I found it very infuriating why we were also running around in face masks and face shields and risking our lives to feed the city. And I thought, well, who's here for us? Because we certainly are showing up for LA and the city. We were the ones that were bringing the food to the hospitals for free while we were broke. We were the ones that were feeding the hospital workers. We were the ones that were feeding the town. When I think it was the second shutdown, and my dad was also being simultaneously taken away in an ambulance for COVID. And it was the last time I'd ever seen him. The same day they shut us down. And something inside of me just snapped. And I thought, sitting on the sidelines playing the good little constituent is getting me nowhere. All these people that I've, done so much for, bent over backwards, hit every regulation, followed every rule. They are torturing my employees while I watched. They have taken away all job security from them during the holidays and all money, knowing that there's no unemployment coming. They took everything from me. My father was dead, was on his way to die, and my business was dead. And so I started to get very vocal. And because Casa Vega is so famous, all I had to do was stand outside on the sidewalk and a bunch of news trucks would show up. And then they were shocked that there was this mouthy little girl coming out saying the politicians were doing a horrible job and that I was a full lifelong Democrat. And I still believe they were doing a horrible job, that they were treating the essential workers that are often low-income workers with no regard. So from that, I made a list of everybody that voted against restaurants during that time, and I kept track of all these politicians and where their trajectory was going. And so I stayed on top of them. And I would say a bunch of them are no longer in office for scandal-related issues, which was just very, very rewarding in various ways. I made sure that from then on out that they would know who I was. Because when COVID happened, I kept calling and nobody bothered to return my phone call. Now that maybe after I put a couple of their names up on my marquee, frying them, or on social media, they all return my call. That I definitely have a very active voice in LA politics. And that I represent the right thing. I represent just normal, regular, hardworking people. One side, they'll call us privileged. That's not, immigrant, hardworking families are not privileged. We worked really, really hard, and let's not get that confused. And on the other side, it's, you guys should just keep paying and paying and paying. So at the end of the day, I realized that it was my duty with this platform of Casa Vega to get up there and say this wasn't right and that we're just small family businesses. We are people that want to stay in our restaurants. We want to serve margaritas and beans and rice. I don't want to be on the news banging the politicians. But if it means saving this industry, then that's exactly where they're going to find me.
Yeah, and Dolores, just pop in on the conversation. And any time. But you're right. We are vital. We are essential. I will say that certainly during that COVID time, Christy, everyone was feeling the challenges, right? We were all, as business owners, women business owners, having to make decisions about our team members and taking care of them and having to make decisions about the survival of our business. And quite frankly, in the beginnings, the two didn't go hand in hand. Here we were hearing about, money that would be coming down to help for our team members and to help us to survive, but we had to use it by such and such a time, which maybe didn't guarantee that there would be, survival of our business going forward. There were lots of decisions during that time. I will just share that I was very close to our mayor at the time. I was co-chair on his transition committee when he was elected, and he called me, and he called me on that Sunday, and he said, Lorraine, he said, I think we're going to be shut down by Tuesday. The governor's going to announce that there's going to be a 50%, but I'm going to let you know I am going to shut down our city on Tuesday. And then the governor shut down everything on Thursday. And I was like, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the relationships that we have, that you can call and tell me that. And I think everybody was on board for the first, 2.5 weeks, right? Nobody knew what was going on. They're building the plane while they're flying it. And we were all on board.
Yeah.
And
That's it was in LA too.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. I just, again, part of me joining, and I joined our chamber as well. At that time, I wasn't seeing any other restaurants involved, which was a little disappointing. But I think it was the same message, the same reason is, okay, who's looking out for us? Who's paying attention? We're getting all these things handed and thrown our way, but are we really understanding the effect this is having on business? And even in general, as we're getting, you're down to, 50%, then 25%, then no dining. It's just the constant pivoting that we were doing. I think all of us were doing to stay in survival, right? So I think for us, I always say behind the scenes, nobody saw what was happening, because up front and center, I think everybody just saw business running as normal as it was or could be at that time. But behind the scenes, there was so much going on, getting ready for those. What's next? What's coming our way? Do we have to close a store? Do we have to lay off people? And I think that's, those are all challenges. And for me, it was like, what can we do to make sure that our team does not lose out? So what is those decisions need to be, right? So we keep as many employed as possible.
But I think what's important is that you've maintained, both of you, active in the CRA, active in advocacy. So we are now post-COVID. What are the things that keep us up at night now?
For me, we live in LA, and that's where Casa Vega resides. So crime and homelessness are huge effect for our businesses in LA, and especially our restaurants. Restaurant crime, just on break-ins alone, is up 103%. Those are stats from LAPD. Just since 2020, Casa Vega has been broken into for cash more than 10 times since 2020. I went cashless because of this reason. The unhoused is an issue for us because LA has put massive money behind to fix this problem, billions, and we're still nowhere. And we had a lot of patience for the first couple of years because everybody knew we were in this together. And this was an issue. But now there's gross negligent spending by our local politicians with no oversight and no real effect on the streets of LA. So I have friends that have closed their restaurants due to encampments that have been there for 2 years and they don't have any customers. I have friends that have had their management beat up by homeless. I had a busboy stabbed by a transient coming off work at 10:30 a.m. to serve beans and rice. Why aren't we looking out for the low-income workers that can no longer ride our bus, that can no longer take these methods of transportation to their work? And that, if you do a crime, you do a crime. But that small businesses in LA and across California, we're losing all our insurance. We're losing our business insurance. And in places like LA, in addition to the fact that insurance are just moving out of California, they pull our crime ratings in our area. And so if we are able to retain our insurance, our premiums have skyrocketed upwards to 54%. So it puts small businesses, we are really paying the price for these failed policies that are happening right now. And while there's less incarceration and less money going towards that, the amount of property crime and business crime that has happened to our restaurants it's skyrocketed well beyond those numbers. These policies and experiments should not be on the backs of small businesses. We just can't afford it. Someone has to stick up for the workers.
Yeah. Well, it has to be us, right? Right, Dolores? It has to be us.
Yeah, I agree. We're across San Diego County. We have 5 locations now. And that is, we did close our location in downtown San Diego for different reasons. I think the final decision really came about with our employees not being safe. We had homeless coming into our store. We'd find them in the restrooms. They'd throw, water bottles or whatnot at our team members. And at the end of the day, we just had to think, is it worth it? Is it worth somebody's life? Is it worth somebody's safety for us to keep doing business down here? So we did make a difficult decision as a family, though, to close that store once our lease was up. And this was last year. So definitely homelessness is an issue everywhere now. I've never seen it so bad. That's something, but also wage pressures, staffing, the regulations that continue to come our way, and PAGA, right? Those things keep me up constantly. It would be nice to take a day off and not think about those things, but it doesn't matter where we're at or what we're doing. Those are always on our minds, and getting ready for the next. I feel like we don't have an opportunity to get ready or to get accustomed to what came our way, with the minimum wage, when there's already another one on the ballot coming up, as we turn around.
Proposition 32.
Right, yeah. So we just don't get I feel like we just don't get any breaks. Things keep coming our way. And I just wonder who, of these politicians, do they understand business?
No, I think it's very clear. They're social workers and they've never balanced a P&L.
Yeah,
We're took an economics class, quite frankly, to understand that if you keep raising the minimum wage, the lowest income workers are not going to have any more money in their pocket because their McDonald's meal went from $60 to feed their family of 4 now to $85.
Right.
Right. I agree. Why do they not understand the economics that all we're going to do is raise prices, right? They're not having any more buying power.
Mm-hmm.
The things that keep me up at night are the wage pressures. Staffing, I think, is really important. The insurance, yes, Christy, all of that, workers' compensation. And then what are the local challenges? For Fresno, we had a wage theft ordinance passed. And so what does that mean and what does that look like? Well, and it's the first in the state of California, that our employees can report an employer to the city attorney's office for wage theft. Well, we already have those mechanisms in place through the Department of Labor and through the EEOC. Those are things that, keep me up at night. What is our local city council going to do to put more onus on the business? The unhoused, an issue. Our mayor had a great program about getting the people off the freeways, but then you need the cooperation of Caltrans to be able to do that and cleaning up encampments. We have a number of members in the Fresno area that had the exact experience, the exact things you both are talking about, with employees and employee family getting hurt over an unhoused issue and not having the ability for the PD to be able to respond to that until, of course, the federal government had this finally settled this grants pass legislation that was in court. And now we have just recently passed, that took effect about 8 days ago, the no camping ordinance, which now the PD has more that they can do to move the unhoused and the encampments along. So, hopefully we're going to see that. I mean, I think the people that are, through the efforts that are made based on your city, and I can speak for Fresno, that what we have more on the streets are more of the people that are violent. Those people that want to be off the streets and want the help, they're getting off the streets. But we have more people that what we see now are more violent that are in the unhoused community. Insurance, exactly all the figures you talked about, and hopefully that, as hopefully through some changes, we're going to be able to get insurance rates back and get more providers doing business back in the state. But, through all these challenges that we talk about, we are still in this business. And that's what our legislators push back at us. So the question is, why? Why? Dolores, you talked about surviving. Christy, you're a survivor. You're a survivor in your business. I'm a survivor in my business. As we talk about this in our next generation, we bootstrap, right? Because we're going to make sure our businesses continue. But, what beyond that in community service that keeps you engaged in doing what you're doing?
I always say the only reason you would go into restaurants right now is if you're insane or if you were born into it. And so I think we all fall into that, and we're born into it, and this is our legacy and this is our family. And I'm not going to let bad policy and politics take it away from me or take it away from my family. And I'm not going to succumb to them and their faulty thinking. And, it's very localized. I think, what's going on in LA is incredibly localized. We have the same thing where we have a city council that repeatedly goes after business, and they've criminalized business owners, and they've made everything our responsibility, and everything kind of the buck stops with us. We have to fix it. And so I think that my passion and why I show up at every city council meeting and why I show up everywhere I am is I'm fighting for my family. This is something we've done in this town for 68 years. And because we have a bunch of politicians that don't know what they're doing and want some headlines, I'm not going to let them take away Casa Vega from my boys. And they're going to have to fight me tooth and nail to do it. And I do feel like we have, even at the state at some level, they're hostile towards restaurants. They're hostile towards small business. And every single politician will say, we support small business. We support small business. BS. I want to start seeing it. And I think that especially as females, especially as Latinas, we need to get out there and voice this. We deserve more. Our businesses deserve more, our families deserve more, and our legacies deserve more. That's why I'm not getting out. I'm not going to let a bunch of bad politicians push me out. Newsom can't do that.
I agree. What Christy says is completely right. Why do we stay here? It wasn't my original game plan, actually, to join the family business. And it just happened. Like I said, we were open probably 17 years by the time I joined. And now what keeps me here is exactly that. It's exactly the family. My parents are counting on me to make sure that I run this business and I keep it healthy. not only for them and the rest of their, their futures, but for my family, for my siblings, for our children. And it's true. Sometimes I can't, I'll be honest, in the last few years, sometimes there's been a time that I can finally admit to where I said, like, what, it's time to throw in the towel. Like, why are we doing this? Right? We're working harder than ever and getting less out of it. At times I was like, sometimes some of the team members are negative, but I had to not focus on that. And I had to focus on the positive, right? And the positive, the great team members that we do have working for us. And the fact that not only my family's counting on me, but our team is counting on me.
That's right.
To make sure that they have and they are able to support their families as well. So we always say Lolita's is not just the Farfan family. It is our community. It is our team members. It is everybody involved, or all the stakeholders involved. And we want to continue, and I want to continue to run this company to be successful, to stay here for another 40 plus years and be part of this. And you're right, regardless of what's coming our way, we just have to pivot. We just have to get ready for it. There are possibilities for potential operational changes, but never change who we are at the core. And I think that's the most important thing, is just to stay true to who we are and continue to fight.
Agreed. Continue to fight. I think that, I want to bring up that, as I had said earlier, and you had all said, our industry, it's a great starting point for an immigrant, for a family, for somebody who has an entrepreneurial spirit and coming in. And so for every restaurant that is closing, and today I had some news about a restaurant that was really unique in our area, independent restaurant operator that just can't do it anymore because of insurance, because of rent, because the inflation of our cost of goods to provide. And that really hurt. Yet there's someone else who has an idea that, my mom makes the best this, or I make the best this. And so, we have a culinary innovation center in our area. And this morning, listening to how many entrepreneurs go through there, they're outgrowing their facility, and it's all food based. From somebody who launched a salsa there in the incubator and then has now been kicked out to get a place and do their own, and recently just opened as a collaboration with some other businesses. So I think of those things when I get depressed and down about our business and dealing with everything, and say, you know what, I need to have that re-innovation mindset, and I need to rethink. And so then I go to my nephews and my son and my nephew and my niece, who are all in the business in various jobs with us, and say, okay, you're the next. What are your ideas? And then get reinvigorated, and then say, okay, now here's how we're going to work with today's laws and things to make this happen and innovate. And I said, I'm your advocate. I'm the advocacy portion. You guys are the doer and idea portions now as we're going through the transition. So that's what helps to keep me motivated with these things that keep me up at night. But you mentioned community, and, restaurants are great community providers and sponsors and supporters. We are so giving, even when the bottom lines don't support that giving. And if my CPA would say, oh my gosh, you gave so much away, and really the bottom line is you're whittling that down. And my belief is, when you give back to your community gives back to you tenfold. And I think all of us have described seeing that within our communities. And so, we have to love on our communities, and we love not just on our team members, but, I don't look at just providing job for my team members. I look at it's providing jobs for the families. We are supporting a family because this team member's supporting a family, whether they're going to school or whether they are the primary owner or a contributor to make the primary household income.
Well, I think what people need to know is that so much of our job has gone outside of our four walls. And case in point is this podcast. And so that small business owners and restaurant owners we've had to turn into our biggest advocates. We've had to turn into influencers if we want people to know what our restaurant is on TikTok and Instagram. We've had to talk about pivoting, do everything we can to stay alive. And that's, I think, what I would love for everyone to take away is that every restaurant you go into, there is so much heart and passion by the ownership, by the staff, by the community that attends and goes to your restaurant, that there's really, I think that my biggest goal is to humanize us, and that we're not big business, that we are entrepreneurs, we are creatives, we are, curators of celebration. And that's the lane we'd like to stay in. But we've had to pop out to make sure that those doors can stay open. So I would love people to take away that when you hear a restaurant operator speaking up about something, it's not because they want to. They'd rather be at their restaurant with their family or with their employees doing day-to-day tasks. But when we're speaking up, it's because things are really bad and we have to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very much an introvert. I think you'll probably be able to pick up on that with this podcast. And I like being behind, my doors or at our stores because I love knowing our team, knowing I don't want to just write a check and not know who it is, right? I love going in there, getting to know our team, and being out there. And that's what I do. That's what I love. But these last few years, I've had to go in front of, in this case, the camera or in front of others and get to meet people and network, which was something that I always was like, I hesitate to do, and I still do. But I know in order for me to grow, in order for me to understand and learn from others, that's what I need to do. So Christy's right. We've had to do so many things during these past few years. I would always joke we're going from our day job to our night job because we'd have to go from office into the stores and help wash dishes, cover, just help get food out, cover wherever we could, even though we were not the experts, because I'm not the expert in the operations. I'm the expert out here. So just being there and letting our team know that we are here for you. I am here for you. And we're not going to let you do this alone. I think that's extremely important. So we care about our team. They're not just numbers to us. They're people, they're individuals.
You know what I love too, and I'm going to speak about this, as women in the business, right? And our culture. So here we are, strong women in our business and leading our businesses. And Christy, I don't know if you had siblings, but I remember when my mother was making a decision. This was after my father had passed away, and I had been asked to come back to the business and making that decision to move back. That was hard. And I said, Mom, here you are. I have 3 younger brothers. You're running the business. I said, you're a strong woman in the business. And she didn't see herself that way. And so she told a family business consultant and said, I want Lorraine to lead the business, but she doesn't have the right gender to be able to do that. And that was a form of, coming from a generation, right? And I said, hey, Mom, I said, what have you been doing? Yes, my brothers have been here. Yes, they're helping you. But what have you been doing? You're the strong woman in this generation. 30 years ago, you're the strong woman in this generation, and you're leading this business. And so, we as women in our culture, I know things have changed, but I'm going back to my earlier generation and saying the boys would be thought of first before the women would be thought of. Yet it's really the women, when you look back at each of us growing up, who really lead the family. And I loved it best. I think it was said in My Big Fat Greek Wedding that he's the head, but I'm the neck that controls the head. With that, I would say that we could probably see that, in our family and family businesses. And maybe I went off the deep end a little bit on that, but I just am trying to just point out that we are strong women in our areas and we celebrate that. And I think it's important that women celebrate women and women don't tear down women. And I think it's really important that what CRA has done, and this is why I joined CRA back in the early 1990s when I came back into my family's business, because I knew that I needed to network. And all that were there on the board of CRA in Fresno were men. And we're men. And I was the first woman on the local chapter board. So, it's great to see that we as women are sharing our stories. And I see that through other organizations as well. And I want to celebrate that. I want to highlight that,
Well, I think it's really important. And what you hit upon too is not only are we the women and leading our businesses, but we're Latina. And I think that what the nation's going to start to see very quickly, and certainly what California has already seen, is a Latinization of California. And that, in our culture where we may not have been the first picks, or can she take it? Can she do it all? I know I had to jump through numerous hoops with my father to prove that I could do it. But his favorite saying is, she's tougher than she looks. And while the culture was hesitant of female leadership, I was encouraged by no one else but my father to be tough, to have a voice, to have an opinion. I told him I wanted to go to culinary school, and you'll appreciate this, Lorraine. He said, no. He said, your culinary school is that big giant kitchen and all that staff, and you can spend as much time as you want in it, but you're going to go to business school, and you're going to learn business, and you're going to learn how to keep your doors open. So I think that it's funny in this culture where maybe we weren't always first choice. We were certainly put up to the task by your mother, and by my father.
With that, yes. So any additional organizations that you are all involved in that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yes, I'm heavily involved in Regarding Her, which is a woman-owned, and we've expanded to just women in the restaurant industry. So women-owned restaurants. I'm very involved with the Independent Hospitality Coalition, and I'm involved in numerous political pro-business things around town.
Yes. So for myself, obviously it's a CRA, both state and local, as well as the California Restaurant Foundation, then Chula Vista Chamber here locally. So that's pretty much it for me.
Well, that's great. Yeah, no, I've been involved with the chamber for a long time. We support a lot of local nonprofits. I always, when I say that I'm going to retire, which everybody laughs and says, okay, Lorraine, you're never retiring. I says, yeah, I'm semi-retired, but I keep my arm out here, is to work with the autism groups. I have a grandchild who's on the autism spectrum, and that is something that's close to my heart. And so my husband and I and my son, want to look at and are looking at training programs for higher functioning in our restaurant industry, because there definitely is opportunity there, and we want to do something for our Tyler, and maybe call it Tyler's Corner. So that's our next venture. So thank you very much, ladies, for joining us today on the Confidential Bulletin. It was a very robust and vibrant discussion. I have a high regard and respect for each of you, and I just love learning from you both, and I look forward to our time together at the next CRA function.
Love you, Lorraine. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. We'll see you next time. I appreciate
We'll see you,
it.
Dolores. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Hello, I'm Anthony Zoller with the Zoller Law Group. I wanted to discuss employers' obligations around holidays and holiday pay. Just had a question recently from a restaurant on whether an employee can refuse to work on a holiday if the restaurant's open. And generally, the employee can be required to come into work on holidays. There are some exceptions. If the employee has a religious accommodation that's required, the employer needs to engage in the interactive process and provide a reasonable accommodation due to religious observances. But generally, employers can require employees to come into work on holidays and work holidays. And when the employee is working on a holiday, there is no extra pay that's required. So it's not required to pay time and a half or anything like that. Some states outside of California may have those obligations, but California does not have that requirement for holiday pay. Now, employers can voluntarily enter into an agreement with their employees and provide that the employees get paid more when they're working on holidays, but it's not legally required. And also, if the employer is closed on a holiday, but then has to call some employees to work when they're on that day off, it's just normal pay practices for those employees who come to work on that holiday, and there is no extra pay that's required to those employees as well.